Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? It is Thursday, September 15th, 2016. It's not 2017 yet, though we hope it comes shortly. Time for another show. Bill in Portland, Maine is ready as always. Daily Coast Radio is live now. To preserve our sanity, perhaps Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, should just talk about kittens for 2 hours. Probably a good idea. I get the sense, I guess I'm accurately, projecting the toll that this election is taking on me. It really is. It's getting exhausting, and these weeks seem longer and longer, and I'm glad for the break of the show. It really is a nice break to be able to vent some of this stuff out rather than just reading it and screaming, I guess, into the wind. I encourage you all to start your own radio shows so that you can do the same. I think it's therapeutic, and I think you'll find it that it helps. And look, the show only has to be about 2-3 minutes long, and you should record it and then email it to me at kagrox@gmail.com. No spaces anywhere. I don't like spaces. We don't use them in the email industry. I'm not in that industry. I use email. That's about it. And just pick up your personal smartphone. If you've got a dumb phone, I guess you can try and find yourself a smarter computer and record it there. Easy enough to do. And email me the file. A 2 or 3 minute segment fits nicely in most email programs. And we can play it on the air, and you become a contributor. And then when we win, what are there, radio awards? When we win some kind of fabulous radio award, if we're even radio, I don't know. We say radio, why not? We'll take the award, and then I don't know. We'll take a photo of it, and we'll send it to you. You can Photoshop it into a picture of yourself holding it up. How about that? Then, great. Why not? Okay. So what else is going on here? I don't know. Donald Trump appears to be running for president, though he's not making any of the disclosures that presidential candidates usually make. I don't know if you've heard about this, but I have, and we'll talk about it. All sorts of other things buzzing around this morning. I guess Trump found himself in the Flint, Michigan area again yesterday with maybe like half a schedule put together. And I think he visited the Flint Waterworks for all of about 15 minutes. And I understood from the brief reports that flashed across the screens when he did it that I guess he thanked the executives at the Flint Waterworks for their great job that they've been doing, giving everybody this poisonous water. So that's nice. He just likes executives, and they are executives, and so good. Executives good, I guess, was the message. There's lots of executives' good news in the morning roundup. I have been meaning to get to this one, and maybe we'll pull up David Dayen's work. I see also Fortune magazine commenting on Wells Fargo, and I guess some brilliant MBA there found a fantastic new sideline of creating fake accounts, and I guess it wasn't even really supposedly about incurring fees for people. They would start phony accounts for customers that didn't ask for them and would move money back and forth in between them. And I don't even know exactly what that was supposed to do for them, but I know this. It generated an awful lot of money, and apparently all the people who actually did the work got fired. The executive who came up with the idea and oversaw the work got a $125 million bonus. And why did we get up this morning? I really don't know. Greg, why are you up?
Because at my age you need to.
Yeah, there's just certain things you got to take care of during the day.
Yeah,
and,
I was reading an interesting thing about my cohort, and so since we're going to talk a little bit about some of the latest polls this morning.
You and this other person are Horts?
Horts of Co, yeah.
Okay.
So we are, as we like to say, of a certain age.
I got it.
And so there's a new CBS New York Times poll.
Yes.
out this morning. There's been about 24 hours worth of non-stellar polling for Clinton, which certainly is tightening the race, but not changing the fundamentals there. To me, just to give you a brief overview, not in football terms.
Okay.
I was hoping for a 2008 election, but it looks like it's going to be more of a 2012 election, except we have a better ground game this year compared to them.
Okay, that makes a certain amount of sense to me, although ground game makes me think you were going to go football anyway.
Yeah, but, I'm talking about get out the vote and that sort of stuff. So let's look at the new CBS New York Times poll today, and that's the first item there in your Skype list that I sent you today. I always send David a bunch of stuff that I'm talking about, usually not in the order to make him scramble and try to find out what the heck is he talking about here.
Yeah.
So CBS New York Times comes out, and the second graphic there kind of shows everything, the black and white one. 2016 vote for president among likely voters. Clinton 46, Trump 44. Does that feel close? Well, it's funny because in 2012 it was Obama over Romney by 3. So this particular poll assumes that there's going to be a lot of white people voting and not as many non-white people voting.
Can white people vote?
They can.
All right.
And if they're of a certain age, and we'll get to that too. But when you look at the breakdown of who's voting for who and why, you find some very, very similar things that you've probably been hearing like for a year now. Men, Clinton 39, Trump 50. Women, Clinton 52, Trump 39.
Hey, look at that. It's almost the same, but in reverse.
Prefer Trump, women prefer Clinton. There's more women than men that vote. That's a good thing.
Oh, yeah. I'll take that.
All right. White voters, 40 Clinton, 51 Trump. Black voters, 89 Clinton, 6 Trump.
Hey, he's up.
All right. White men, 33 Clinton, 57 Trump. That's by 14. White women, 46 Clinton, 45 Trump. Trump is losing white women.
He likes white women.
It's not broken out because of numbers.
Yeah.
There's a small cohort. But I would venture to say that he's also losing women of color.
Yes. Why they don't? That's interesting. So breakout for.
Well, it's the size of the cohort there.
Oh, okay. Not big enough.
White voters are generally, somewhere between 74 and 78% of the electorate, depending upon how you model it, and that gets to our discussion about likely voters, which is what this is. Now, in the registered voter category, actually Clinton has a 5-point lead. So if you think everything's collapsed for her because she had a couple of bad polls from Ohio, no.
Oh.
Just thought I'd say that. Anyway,
okay.
Republicans, Clinton 7, Trump 85. This is among likely voters. Democrats 87, Trump 9.
Okay.
9% of Democrats vote for Trump. Well, I always like to call them Florida Panhandle Democrats.
That may be it.
That is
Florida man votes for Trump.
They're registered as Democrats, but they always vote Republican.
All right. I don't know why they don't
used to
change
be
that.
Reagan Democrats, but those are all dead.
Yeah. So is
If
Reagan.
you're a Democrat and you're not dead, you can call into the show and yell at David.
Right, if you can figure out how to dial the
If you can figure out how to get on the internet, right?
Right.
Independents, 39-42 Trump. Under age 30, 48 to 29 Clinton. We'll get to that. 30 to 44, 45 to 39 Clinton. 45 to 64, 46 Clinton, 48 Trump. What is wrong with us? That's my cohort. And 65 plus 46 Clinton, 50% Trump. White college graduates, 51 Clinton, 40 Trump. She's winning by 11 there with white college graduates. White non-college graduates, 32-58 Trump, which is why he's close.
Okay.
So to put this in perspective, Will Jordan, who does the YouGov reporting, has this really nice graphic, not the black and white one, but the one just above it in all sorts of colors.
Okay.
And just tries to put this in perspective because they compared the CBS poll from September 2012, which was done about the same time, and almost exactly the same dates, 8th to the 12th instead of 9th to the 13th this year. And here's what we find. Under 30 in 2012.
2012, under 30. Okay.
30. Obama 53, Romney 45. That's the middle column there.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And so that was an 8-point lead.
Yes, okay.
Right? And right now, for Clinton, under 30s, it's Clinton 48, not as high as Obama, but Trump is 29 instead of Romney's 45. That's a 19-point lead for Clinton in the under 30s.
Well, all right.
All right? So that's a 11-point difference in Clinton's favor.
Yeah, okay, got it.
So stop yelling at the kids, all right? Stop. They're not the problem.
I don't know.
Okay. Here's one huge difference.
Yes.
In
Pokemon.
September of 2012, neither or other or I don't know was 2.
Aha, 2%, right?
And now it's 23.
Huh.
These are the 23% that are going to vote for Stein, they think, are going to vote for Johnson, they think. They won't after these guys don't get into the debates, which they're not going to do.
Or get on the ballot in their state.
Especially for Stein. Johnson may be everywhere. What's going to happen is those numbers are going to drop. Now, some of the undecideds may not vote at all, but they won't be voting for Trump.
Well, that's...
It would be better if they voted for Clinton. It would help her lead, but the under 30s are not a huge cohort in who votes.
Yes, that's true.
So it's...
So you can yell at them. Go ahead.
You can't yell at them. I mean, it's
Why
not their
not?
fault.
They don't vote.
No, they just make up their mind late.
Okay.
Just like my kids.
All right. Make up your minds earlier. You can do that.
All right. 30 to 44-year-olds. Clinton 45, Trump 39 this year. Obama 50, Romney 45 the last time. That's actually a 1-point betterment. Better numbers for Clinton.
I see. A 6-point lead versus a 5-point lead for Obama.
Exactly.
Okay.
45 to 64. This is where the problem is. The 45 to 64-year-olds. 45 to 48 Trump, and it was 52-45 for Obama. So turns a 7-point Obama lead into a 3-point deficit. That's an 11. It's a 10-point swing.
Okay.
Yes. And really, it's the only cohort that is doing worse this year compared to 2012. So if you are 45 to 64, blame yourselves. Don't be blaming everybody else. It's your fault. It's our fault.
Oh.
There is no wisdom in that cohort, right? No wisdom teeth, no wisdom in their brains. Why they're voting for Trump, I don't know. But that's the group.
I don't even know how to. I guess I barely fit a couple of years into the group. I'm thinking I don't know how to. With all the other groups, well, not all the other groups. How do you even get to them? What's the problem?
But the thing is, just for a year we've been blaming millennials. Stop. It's not the millennials' fault. The kids are all right. Every once in a while you read one of those things. I guess it's all being written by this cohort. That's the problem. Yeah, I guess so, right? The millennials just aren't into it the way that they were for this, that, and everything else. We're having a debate on Twitter this morning. What is less important, momentum or enthusiasm?
Oh. Less important is momentum. I don't have any sound effect for it.
Okay, well, less important is momentum. So Trump has momentum, but Clinton has the lead.
Okay.
Right? That would be fair. She's been off the trail for a week. People were worried about her health scare. And so I think a lot of that plays into it. So let me just...
we should say she's a zombie and back from the dead. That would probably help with the millennials.
Well, yeah, it would. But, don't forget you can beat her with salt.
Oh.
Let me read to you some polling numbers from 2012, just to put things in perspective here. Remember that the first debate, which everybody was freaking out about, between Obama and Romney was something like October.
Yes.
Okay?
Right.
So, let's pick what's today? Today's the 15th. So let's start looking at polls that are at or around the 15th. Hartford Current, Obama +3, National Journal, Obama +7, Politico, Obama +3, Bloomberg, Obama +6, Politico, Battleground, Obama +2, ABC News, Washington Post, Obama +2. He was higher. Hillary's doing better in the September ABC Washington Post poll than Obama did at that particular point in time. Clinton, I think, was up by 5 in the Quinnipiac poll in September. Up by 10, if you look at registered voters, I think there was a big difference there. Quinnipiac had Obama plus 4. And then right before the debate, you have numbers like CNN, Obama plus 3, Gallup, Obama plus 4. They were still doing this. Rasmussen, Obama plus 2, GWU Battleground for Politico, Obama plus 1. And then after the debate, it was Romney plus 2, Romney plus 4. And people were freaking out, and then I got this great article here from Business Insider, dated October 15th, 2012. New poll, Mitt Romney's crushing Obama in the swing states. I just want to give you an idea of the great American freakout that happens whenever polls tighten.
Yeah.
And they inevitably tighten. They always do, because the weak partisans kind of come home a little bit. So we saw this back in October of 2012 after the first debate, and we're seeing a bit of it now. And there's a nice piece in Salon, actually, by Gary Legum that covers it. It's already happening. Yes, Trump is closing in the polls, but here's why that's meaningless, and talks about the fact that momentum never really matters.
Okay.
All right, just to set the table there. So we have this CBS New York Times poll. We have the same poll that shows Clinton plus 2 had Obama plus 3. And really, it's all about how you really figure those likely voters are going to fall and what's really a likely voter. And if you give more weight to the over 65s, you're going to wind up with an electorate that's more white, older, and favors of the Republican. I mean, this is just a thing that happens. And so that's why the registered voters in the New York Times CBS poll, which I believe are plus 5 Clinton, if you want to compare that to where she was before, that's a better way of doing it. The likely voter is supposed to be the model that tells you what's really going to happen in November, except I'm not so sure that it does. And that's because in previous years, sometimes the registered voters are a better measure. You got to guess, the pollster's trying to guess, the modeling of the electorate. It's just really hard to do, so don't take it at face value. I'll probably be repeating that from now till the election, but just as important.
Yeah. Well, that's
right?
it, yeah. People miss it. People forget it. People never heard it the first time.
If you want to know whether she's going up or down, look at the registered voters compared to the previous polls that are registered voters. If you want to see where the pollster's guessing the electorate's going to look like and what it's going to be like come election time, look at the likely voter, but understand that it's a pretty big guess. And if the two numbers diverge a lot, then it's a wild guess.
Okay. That's a good way of putting it.
Okay, so here's Adrian Gray. As long as Trump is losing white college voters, which he is,
yes.
Romney was up by 14, McCain was up by 4, and Bush was up by 10, and he's losing them by 8. Then his path to 270 appears blocked.
Okay.
On September 15th, Romney was plus 3 with college whites, and he finished with plus 14. McCain was at plus 7 and finished plus 4. Bush was plus 10 and finished at plus 10, and Trump is minus 8. So he's doing worse, basically, than Romney did. And it's hard to figure, if that's the case, how he's ahead. He's not. And how he wins, I don't think he will. Ron Brownstein, another smart guy looking at these. And this isn't unskewing. This is just trying to model the electorate based on who you think is going to turn out. Ron Brownstein writes, just noting the New York Times and Quinnipiac polls put Trump plus 10 with whites. If voters are even 75% white, which is higher than it's been, Clinton is plus 5 overall if she wins non-whites by 50. And she's plus 6 if she wins non-whites by 55. And is that possible? Remember, we were just talking about that. And if you look at the New York Times poll today, remember, black voters 89-6. So he's talking about winning non-whites by 50 or 55 points. She's going to win
That's lower.
Voters by 80 points. And then there's everybody else. Latinos who aren't measured in the poll because it's too small a cohort, and sometimes New York Times puts them in the white category, depending, and Asians, which are a very, very small slice of the electorate by matter anyway, especially in places like California, which is not going to be, a contested state anyway. But Just to give you an idea of modeling the electorate, when Brownstein does it and other people does it, Trump still has these underlying issues that don't go away. And that's why Mike Murphy, who is a Republican and who's a non-Trump Republican, was tweeting this morning. So it looks like Trump has a pretty good chance of being president of September 16th.
Okay.
But there's a long way till November. And he's just not going to do it.
Well, we hope not. Certainly, everybody's all.
Right. We can't guarantee you that Clinton's going to win. We can't guarantee you that Trump's going to lose. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is don't overinterpret the data to mean this is just like Brexit.
Oh,
right. Because Nate Silver had a tweet that said this is feeling a lot like Brexit, but then he went on to say that Clinton still has a lead.
Oh.
That's the point, not whether or not it feels like Brexit, because I don't even know what that means. I wasn't in England. I don't know what that feels.
Yeah, well, it feels like it, though, so...
It feels like it might feel like it.
Right. That's the truthy part. It's truthy that it might be truthy. It's even, like you say, one step removed.
Right. Anyway, the point of going over 2012 is that Obama had a really narrow lead at this particular point in time in the race.
Yes.
And then it grew.
Oh.
And it narrowed after the first debate, and it grew after the next two. So Clinton's been off the trail. She's been ill. That's been a topic of conversation. This is probably a low point for her. And the debates are going to be in less than 2 weeks.
Okay. Do debates ever shape anything?
They normally don't, but in this particular year they may well, because Trump is kind of a unique kind of character.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. I understand they're still battling over the format, and I guess his position is he's asking for moderator-less debates.
I don't know. It sounds like Bobby Fischer negotiating on chess games.
I think so. I don't know how that would...
I mean, the guy's crazy, just whatever.
Okay. I'll take it. He is. And I think he proved it yesterday. I have more reports now on what went on while he was in Flint.
Yeah, among other things, touring a empty plant.
Yes.
And yelling at the pastor who interrupted his speech.
Yes.
Because he wanted to attack Clinton, and she said, you were invited here, to talk about us, not you and her. And then he went on to rant about her being shaky and unstable.
Yeah, that was...
So he's back to attacking normal people, so I guess somebody gave him his phone back.
I guess so. So, yeah, I think he's upset with the pastor who said, reminder, in a church, one, you don't really give the attack speeches in the church, generally. But
yeah, particularly when you're invited there.
Yeah. And
right.
this
unless
would be
unless
it's a
campaign fake event that your campaign has set up, like he's done before.
And this is an improper venue for it. And by the way, little people like us, we have to abide by the rules of governing nonprofit status, etc. So,
right.
Give a
So
nice
what you
speech.
do is you rent the hall next to the church, and then it's the church. That's what he did in Detroit.
Right. Well, that's politicians of all stripes do. They do these sorts of appearances, and she just said, why don't you keep it to how you think we're wonderful people and we think you're a wonderful guy, and keep it that way.
You're supposed to talk to us about how we are resilient, not about you and your issues.
And
we're the ones that have the drinking water problem.
Right. Well, so anyway, so now she's an unstable person. She was a nervous mess, etc.
Well, so that's Trump. That's going to go over well. That's going to help him with his outreach, right?
Yes.
So Brian Stelter has a couple of observations about other Trump family members today.
There are others.
There are others, and sometimes they act as surrogates, and he doesn't think it's a great idea. Why it's risky to have family members double as campaign surrogates? Ivanka Trump cuts off a Cosmo interview after tough questioning. Did you hear about that one?
I did. The problem is that it wasn't tough questioning.
No,
but okay.
It wasn't tough questioning at all.
It's Cosmo.
It's Cosmo, and so she felt like it was a bad vibe.
It's just, it was for her. She was being asked a question, and it was a semi-difficult one in the sense that it required her to take some ownership of something she didn't really want to, so she didn't, which is weird for Trump to not take ownership of something.
Right. So that was that. And then another example, just a few minutes after that, he tweets, Donald Trump Jr. with Pittsburgh Tribune Review indicates that father is not sharing his taxes because of scrutiny, not an IRS audit. And the exact quote is, when asked why his father was not released his tax returns, as presidential candidates have traditionally done, Trump Jr. said, because he's got a 12,000-page tax return that would create financial auditors out of every person in the country asking questions that would detract from his main message. In other words, he's not releasing the tax returns because, wait for it, people would look at it.
Yeah. That's what we're supposed to do with them.
Not them.
We're supposed to ask questions, but
they're supposed to be like, look over here instead of over there, and this does not fit in with the program.
Yeah. By the way, I did see this last night. The question that did you happen to catch the question that set Ivanka off?
I don't know. Were they talking about paying for the wall?
Screen grab here. Well, no, it was about the maternity leave issue, which is supposed to be her thing.
Yeah. It was something about how Trump's father, Ivanka Trump's father, had actually had a different position at some point.
Yes. The exchange is very
question.
brief, in fact, and the interviewer asks, okay, I just want to make sure I understood. In 2004, Donald Trump said that pregnancy is an inconvenient thing for a business. And it is, I understand, but okay, you don't say it that way. It's surprising to see this policy from him today. Can you talk a little bit about those comments and perhaps what has changed? Which is about as gentle a question as you can get on. In 2004, you said pregnancy is an inconvenience for business. Today, you say you want to pay for...
You're the championship.
Yeah, leave while when you're pregnant.
For pregnancy, right?
So her answer is, so I think you have a lot of negativity in these questions, and I think my father has put forth a very comprehensive and very revolutionary plan to deal with a lot of issues. So I don't know how useful it is to spend too much time with you on this if you're going to make a comment like that. So this interview's over.
Right. The vibes are like so bad.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of negativity in these questions. Okay. What is your position? Oh, I can't believe it. I'm leaving. This is totally... I'm giving her the Valley Girling.
Let's get
unfair,
back to
but
what's your favorite color and how wonderful a father is he?
Right. I think this favorite...
You didn't ask that? I'm out of here.
Yep. So that was not very tough, to say the least. He had this position. Now he has that position. Can you talk about what's changed? No?
That's just, to me, just weird rich people privilege.
Yeah.
What I think is much more important is the comment about taxes. I guess everybody else does too. This is from First Read. It's getting harder for Trump to avoid releasing his tax returns. And that's what the purpose really of bringing up this Bondi stuff. It's not going to come to fruition before the election. He won't be charged with anything. The investigations that the New York Attorney General just started aren't going to be finished. And the Trump University stuff won't have come to fruition. And the whole Trump Foundation and how it's done won't. And the Newsweek story about what his business dealings are won't come to fruition. But all of it is driving the question of what are you hiding? And that is something that very much can come to fruition before the election. So the way First Read puts it, it's getting harder and harder for Trump to avoid releasing his tax returns. With less than 8 weeks until Election Day, it looks like Donald Trump will be successful in not releasing his tax returns, becoming the first presidential nominee we can remember not doing so, but it's becoming harder and harder for him to avoid it. First is the news that New York's Democratic Attorney General has launched an inquiry. We knew that. The Trump campaign called it a left-wing hit job. Second was the Washington Post investigative piece noting that most of the Trump Foundation money comes from other people's money. That's David Fahrenthold. That Trump passes the money to other charities, takes credit for it, and that he's used the money to buy himself a gift. One candidate's family foundation has saved countless lives around the world. The other candidate's foundation took money from other people, gave to his charity, and then bought a 6-foot-tall painting of himself. That was Obama on the trail. You'll hear that line a lot. And then the third is the new Newsweek article yesterday dealing how Trump's international business ties could become a significant conflict of interest. Any conventional politician will be feeling the heat. Here, of course, Trump isn't your conventional politician, but every day that goes by with Trump not releasing his taxes suggests there's something to all of these stories, and there's a lot to hide, and that's what the Clinton campaign will bring to the campaign trail. What's he hiding? So you're going to hear a lot of that. You'll hear it in the debate, because if the moderator doesn't ask, and they may not ask because, moderators are not highly thought of these days, not after the Matt Lauer fiasco. But Clinton will ask it.
Yes. And, this is all... yesterday was a big day for this, and I have yet to read through the Kurt Eichenwald piece.
It's long, it's detailed.
Yeah.
But, basically, the question is, if he has so many dealings with foreign agents, that he can't not possibly disentangle himself from Trump Inc.
No, I can't see any way to do it. And there was, I guess, another ridiculous comment from Ivanka the other day was the idea that, it won't be a problem. He's already said he's going to put all of his business holdings into a blind trust administered by us, meaning Ivanka and Donald Jr. and Eric, which I don't think meets the definition of blind trust per se. But I guess she thought that would settle it. In other words, this would be a very interesting situation to even have that happen. I've never seen a president whose children would have more reason to assassinate him, but I hope they won't.
Well, I have trouble using trust and Trump in the same sentence, but there you have it.
The paper
we'll change gears a
into
little
flame.
bit. Just my last piece today, I'm going to give you something from James Hohmann from the Washington Post, which I just thought was fascinating. Why most think the country is on the wrong track despite positive economic indicators. And the last set of economic indicators are absolutely fantastic. We talked about some of that yesterday. An annual report from the Census Bureau includes a raft of positive economic data. Median household incomes rose 5.2%, 3.5 million fewer Americans living in poverty, 4 million gained health insurance, gender pay gap is at a record low, all good, although women still make 80 cents for every dollar men earn, and that is unacceptable. Unemployment rate's down to 4.9. All of it's good. But every single poll shows that more than 6 in 10 Americans feel the country's on the wrong track. Why? So he asked some experts. He asked pollsters. This is a pollster question. So he has a bunch of your favorite pollsters, Republican and Democrat, and asked that question. Donald Trump's campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, pollster by training, said, for many Americans are not connected to politics or policy, while one's attitude toward the state of the nation are related to one's economic condition, other cultural, attitudinal, and situational factors are also in play. So that's true. Here's another, the Suffolk University poll. The Suffolk University poll is the one that stopped polling because Romney was going to win. Remember that? David Paleologos, director of the Suffolk University Political Research Center, said, it's like a person who goes to the doctor and all the tests come back kosher, but the patient feels sick.
Kosher.
So
okay.
Put that together. Let's look at some pollsters that are actually having something more interesting to say. Margie O'Mara, Democratic pollster, who co-hosts the pollsters. There's this sense that the country's adrift. Our politics are beyond repair. Media feeds into that. And even our personal relationships likely ruined by partisan divisions. For many Americans, this all makes the economic gains we've had feel fragile. Ironically, this worry about our new toxic partisan climate is one of the few things on which Democrats and Republicans agree. She's the one that does a lot of the Walmart mom focus groups.
Oh.
So that's the group that she's looking at. Monmouth University, Patrick Murray, pretty respected poll. The larger economy may have improved, but people are worried about the rug being pulled out from under them. In past business cycles, people were more hopeful. This time, people are not enjoying the recovery. They're worried that an even worse downturn is just around the corner.
Okay. I mean,
that could be.
Economic
that one I
anxiety.
like. Another respected pollster from Marist, Lee Miringoff, who partners with NBC and the Wall Street Journal, says people are so conditioned to economic indicators being okay at one level, but on the other level, they're not seeing it in their disposable incomes. So the improvement in the numbers will take some time before that sinks in. That's kind of a traditional thing to say. It goes along with the economic numbers that matter for the election are the ones from 4 months ago, not the ones that are coming out now. Because it takes a while for this stuff to sink in.
Okay, that's a better statement of it. The disposable income thing, I suppose it makes sense. But, yeah, it is rather traditional. I mean, when was the last time anybody felt like, gosh, I'm sitting on a pile of cash. I hardly even know what to do with it.
Right. Now, here's an interesting observation, which is also about the census data, which I think fits in with Trump's appeal. WonkBlog's Jim Tankersley notes that certain very specific groups were left behind. All of the income gains effectively came in cities and suburbs, and none of it flowed to rural areas. In states that expanded Medicaid, allowing more low-income people to be eligible, the uninsured rate was 7.2. In states that didn't expand, the rate was 12.3. So
Well,
what does that mean?
your fault.
Rural Republican governors screwed their own constituents, and they're going to take it out because it's the federal government's fault.
Right.
See Kentucky.
That was the game plan from day one.
And for some it works, and for some
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
On the
it
other
didn't work in
hand-
Louisiana, but it worked in Kentucky. Go figure.
They do have farmersonly.com, and we don't.
So I thought that was a kind of interesting observation. Ann Seltzer, who does the DMR, Des Moines Register poll. Right-wrong track has been politicized. It doesn't track with economic well-being as much as liking who's in charge. You need look no further than the cross-step showing party against right-wrong. So Peter Hart also brings this up too. Peter Hart, for years, he does heart research in a lot of the focus groups, but for years he was the Democratic part of the Wall Street Journal poll. For the moment, I believe the right direction, wrong track question has lost its usefulness, he says. Over a 45-year life of this question, it's tracked within 20% of the president's positive job rating. That is, if the president's at 50, the right direction is going to be 30 or more. Today and for much of the year, America's been out of sorts. Simply put, the country no longer is really judging where we are, but how we feel about where we've been. If it were a good barometer, Obama's numbers would be lower. I think much of this is aimed at the quality of the 2016 campaign, the uncertainty about what's ahead for these candidates. So for the last 6 months, I've dropped this from my own speeches. Also, I believe the high negative numbers are not about the present, but the sense of uncertainty about where we're headed. This presidential campaign has been chaotic, full of doubt. I believe some of the wrong direction is the campaign of the horribles, he says.
Oh.
And again, that's from focus groups. Tom Jensen, who does PPP polling, we like him. Republicans pretty much universally say they think the country's on the wrong track because they don't like the president. Don't want to give him any credit.
Yes.
One set of findings we had that really drove that home is 64% of Republicans say the unemployment rate has increased, and 57% say the stock market's gone down under Obama. Obviously, when you see voters saying something is just objectively wrong, they don't care about the actual statistics. Their assessments on that question are just driven by emotion and their negative feelings toward Obama. And the second piece of that is obviously a decent share of Democrats feel the country's going in the wrong direction too. A lot of people of color and those who care about people of color are disheartened by things like the high-profile police shootings and the lack of action in response to them. And if you live in North Carolina, Wisconsin, and you live in states where actions taken by state government have disheartened them, it puts a cloud over the feelings about how things are going overall. And a lot of the people who supported Bernie Sanders still feel the system is set up too much to benefit the rich and not regular people. So there's no statistical indicators released that's going to change those deeply ingrained feelings. So I think that's all good, and well, part of it just makes it's like asking, do you think Obamacare is good or bad? Well, It depends. I didn't think it went far enough. I would think it went too far. Oh, you see, everybody hates it. Well,
Okay.
those are not similar sentiments; those are opposite sentiments.
Yes, although then they claim to have difficulty.
Half the people like it and half the people hate it. Yeah, but of half the people hate it, a quarter of them want it to do more and a quarter of them want it to do less. So, it's nuanced.
I said both sides, not all three sides.
Exactly.
Oh. Well, okay. 2 is less than 3, and it's easier to finish your article if there's only 2 sides.
Yeah, that's what I say. Anyway, so Thomas Levinson had a very nice observation about that big Kurt Eichenwald piece you were talking about that you haven't finished reading yet.
Okay.
It's part of a larger story. Who owns Donald Trump? There is lots more to find there, New York Times.
Yes, I should say so.
Right, so that's pretty good.
His taxes.
And then we don't do this enough. This is Jessica Valenti. Hillary Clinton weak, not from where I'm standing. The decision not to immediately disclose her pneumonia is being attacked as a lack of transparency, but just as the illness isn't unprecedented, neither is working through it without alerting the media. John Kerry did it. And it's not hard to imagine why Clinton wasn't keen on sharing her diagnoses. Anytime she coughs or is in the vicinity of a pillow, conspiracy theorists on the right insist she's dying of some horrific and well-hidden disease.
Maybe she's allergic
Let's just
to
call
pillows.
it aging white female-itis.
Ah, okay.
Right, so a little bit there. The delusion that Clinton is seriously ill is so ingrained in some people's imaginations that hashtag Hillary's body double started trending on Twitter soon after she emerged from her daughter's apartment.
Yeah.
A year of political cartoonishness, 2016.
Ugh.
Only in 2016 would some people think it's more likely that Clinton employs a doppelganger than the less exciting truth that a few hours of rest and fluids go a long way when you're under the weather.
Yes. It's only, people have been only saying that forever because it was true, but okay.
Right? And then radiologist Saurabh Jha, and all these links for Scott Anderson later are all there on the Pundit Roundup today.
All right.
Saurabh Jha, writing on the healthcare blog, is a radiologist with a bit of wit about him. And he writes about the doctor's note that Clinton got yesterday afternoon, clearing her, basically saying she had a right middle lobe pneumonia, which was very small, seen on CAT scan. If they did a CAT scan, that means they didn't see enlarged nodes, tuberculosis, cancer, or anything else. But he says, it's Mrs. Clinton who's in the crossfire of health McCarthyites. Many have diagnosed her ill health merely by looking at her. This is an extraordinary feat by the lay public, which physicians can't achieve even after years of training. Perhaps I'm not staring at her intently enough, but I can't detect pallor, which would mean she's anemic, by the way, or icterus, which would mean she has liver disease and her eyes turned yellow.
Oh.
I do detect boredom. Rather than the vigor I expect to see in her in the last lap of becoming the first female president, Mrs. Clinton's physiognomy is of a runner who's hit the wall at mile 17 of a marathon.
Oh.
In all fairness, the differential diagnosis for syncope or fainting is broad and includes stroke, pulmonary embolism, a clot in your blood vessels, poisoning by Russians, a theory advanced by Bennett Omalu of concussion fame, and as it seems to be the case with Mrs. Clinton, pneumonia. We should at this moment spare a thought for our colleagues in the emergency medicine department when they order a battery of tests in a patient with syncope, particularly as they have to rule out poisoning by Russians.
Yes, or poisoning by her body double.
Right. So basically, he took the very straightforward letter by the internist who takes care of Mrs. Clinton and went through it step by step and said, look, she has pneumonia. It's all laid out here, and no big deal, really, guys.
What does Dr. Oz think?
We do not care what Dr. Oz thinks, or Oprah, or anybody else who is not really in a position without examining the patient to talk about it, which is why I've been so reluctant to talk about it myself. I haven't examined her.
That is true.
I haven't seen her CAT scan. I will tell you that it's reassuring to have a CAT scan that only shows a small right middle lobe pneumonia.
That would, okay. You're willing to say that, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I can think of a whole lot of worse things that could be on the CAT scan.
Sure, a cat.
Among other things.
Yeah. Right, anything, okay. Well, sounds pretty reasonable, I guess, as opposed to here's a one-page summary from that wacko doctor that writes letters for me while I wait in the limo, and Dr. Oz reads it and says, looks legit to me.
Right. Somebody else wrote on the internet, says that the part about what Clinton did in the doctor's note sounds perfectly legitimate. I mean, think about it. Mrs. Clinton has an upper respiratory infection, goes to the doctor, and gets a CAT scan.
Okay.
Right? I mean, overcharged medicine.
Sure.
How does this sound out of the ordinary?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, I'm just checking. I don't think I've had a CAT scan for anything, but I don't know. Maybe they do it now.
Yeah, well, you get it done fairly regularly if you're of a certain age and they're worried about something. Okay.
Yeah, like to me, if I go to the doctor and they say you need a CAT scan, I say, oh my God, something's gone way wrong.
Right. It's the old, joke about the dog and the cat coming and sitting in your lap, and now you get charged for the CAT scan and the PET scan, right? But the thing is that you are at the lower end of the 45 to 65 year-old cohort, and I am at the upper end. And I am warning you from the future that the very same cough and sore throat and losing your voice that you had earlier this month would be treated very differently at the 65-year end than it would be at the 45-year end.
I see. Well, okay.
It's just the way things are.
Look forward to that. Not very much. Okay. Weird.
Just so you have something to look forward to.
Yeah, all right. I'm leaving now.
Okay. And then there's a really nice piece to finish up from the Washington Post on the Great Sort. The sorting out that happens in your state, Virginia. I thought you might find this interesting.
What?
Basically, people who vote for Hillary Clinton don't live anywhere near people who vote for Donald Trump. And it's one of those, I don't know anybody. None of my friends are voting for Trump. How could he possibly win? Kind of thing. If you think Hillary Clinton should be in jail, how positively are you going to respond to somebody who says, I love Hillary Clinton? If you think Donald Trump is a complete idiot, how positively are you going to respond to somebody who says, I love Donald Trump? And because the answer is not very, the less likely it's going to be you're going to want to talk about it with somebody you don't want to have an argument with.
Right.
Right? So Bill Bishop wrote The Big Sword, Why the Clustering of Like-Minded Americans is Tearing Us Apart in 2008. And he said people moved into those places where you could find your books, the kind of music you want at the club, the kind of food you want. He said, there's actually a good chart showing conservatives want to live overwhelmingly where houses are further apart, even if you have to drive, and liberals want to live in a place that's walkable, even if the houses are smaller and you have a smaller lot. Yes. Save the planet, you know. These lifestyle characteristics become overlaid with political characteristics. It's not surprising one wouldn't know another on the other side, and that's the story about what's going on in Virginia, which since you're a Virginian, I thought maybe you might find interesting.
Yeah.
So
well,
let me give you that link. You can get directly to it.
I wasn't kidding to say we zone ourselves that way here.
Right? New polls show startling degree of isolation in the swing states. So I'll leave you with that. I am not going to be on the show tomorrow because I have meetings. It's Friday. It's September. That's what happens. We'll be back on Monday. Don't freak out about the polls, folks. They're going to get close. It's okay for now. We'll tell you if it's not okay, but right now it's okay. And momentum means about as much as enthusiasm, which is to say not that much.
Okay.
This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman Kagro in the morning, and like you said on the other show the other day, I do like to remind you who you are, just in case you've forgotten, which isn't your problem, but at my age it could be my problem. Take care, and I'll talk to you on Monday. Okay.
All right, thanks very much, Greg. Enjoy the weekend, and we will catch up with you then. Let's see. Oh, look at this. I have a complaint letter in my mail, although I get the sense that it's not entirely, or that it's mostly tongue-in-cheek here. Okay, but I'll have to review it off the air because if I disclose it now, then people will see it, just like with Donald Trump. So and his taxes. So we'll keep that one for later. Although I think that's interesting. Let me star that one and come back to it. Maybe we can even read it and improve the show. Although I doubt it because we're pretty much perfect as I see it at the moment. Okay, so what have we got that we can fill the rest of our day with? There's so many things, so many stories I'd like to get to, and I don't even know where to start. And we'll try and maybe we'll do a couple days of lightning round sort of things, try and get a sampling of the number of there's so many different stories out there for this one. Okay, I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, the Wells Fargo story, and I want to scroll back, rather than going to Fortune magazine, though they have a tempting headline. The Wells Fargo exec who headed phony accounts unit collected $125 million. There's a unit, a phony accounts unit. That by itself is pretty interesting, but I know somewhere a few days ago I put away a David Dayen piece about this, and I think it's always worth going to David first on something like this. And of course, he's out with it first very often too. Where did we put this thing? There's so many things that I have here. And the thing with Pocket is it just sort of stores everything chronologically when you park it. And it doesn't really... I need something that has baskets, deplorable and otherwise, that allow you to put things by topic, and then I wouldn't have to sew the pieces together on the fly as I read them and then try and find it. That would be smart. I tried Evernote, I think, once. I found it. It didn't work. How about that? For us, that's my stock killing statement for the day. Although I don't think anything is being publicly traded on that just yet. Here we are, David Dayen writing for the Fiscal Times. His was the first that I saw on this, which is not unusual for financial issues like this. The Fiscal Times, the real scandal at Wells Fargo. Executives got rich by sandbagging clients. And I told you, I skimmed a little bit of this, and it seems like maybe another one of these too clever by half schemes. My first thought was, they created fake accounts and they charged fees to them and just hoped that people wouldn't notice the fees or complain about the fees or just throw their hands up and say, I'm being killed by my bank on fees, but that's just the way it is these days. And that wasn't really it. So I got to get a flavor from David about exactly what happened in this story. Wells Fargo, gigantic bank, has habitually tried to cultivate a reputation as the good bank that, in quotes, its executives maintain with pride that they stay away from high-risk investment products and focus on traditional banking with the highest ethical standards. If they say it out loud, it almost certainly means that it's just not true, but okay. That's fine. Let's see. Oh, I see David Farenthold is out and tweeting again, too. So let me open that up and keep it open so I can come back to it. Except for the part, so the focus on traditional banking, highest ethical standards. Except for that part where bank employees created over 2 million fake accounts in their customers' names, which I'm sure over in the sovereign citizen sections of the country, they say, aha, see, I knew it. They're doing exactly, it's like the government incorporating each of us, and, well, no, not exactly, but I don't know, somehow eerily reminiscent of it. What do we mean? The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, remember when we didn't have one of those, but then we created it, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and the Los Angeles City Attorney fined Wells Fargo $185 million last week. Who cares? I mean, think about the fact that we just found out that the one executive got a $125 million payment for doing this. They fined Wells Fargo $185 million, and they're paying the executive who did it $125 million. $185 million, apparently nothing to Wells Fargo. But whatever. They fined him $185 million last week for generating fictitious accounts over a 5-year period. Employees forged signatures, and again, David Dayen, again on the stories where financial fraud is just straight up forging of signatures, just like we found out was the case in the great mortgage fraud scandal in his latest book. All right, Chain of Title, by the way, in case you're still waiting on getting his latest book, I highly recommend it. And you should see if you can order it from someplace that'll let you pay an extra $5 or $6 and send that money to David. I've never heard of such a scheme. Of course, it would be a great idea, but you can't. We can't pay this guy enough, and yet we pay him nothing. And $125 million to the loser here from Wells Fargo. Okay, let's get to the reasons behind it. They generated fictitious accounts over a 5-year period. Why? Employees forged signatures, conjured phony email addresses, and shifted funds between real and phony accounts, sometimes generating unwarranted fees for customers. That's an outrage all by itself. Now, it may sound strange to say that this was not, at the root, a consumer fraud case, but it really wasn't. It was more of a securities fraud gambit. It's fraud, just different kind, combined with wage theft, and that explains why the lack of accountability at the top in this matter is so galling. This was written, I think, before the news broke that there was a $125 million payment because they thought it was awesome or something. I don't know. What drove this scheme? The whole story can be found in the pages of the Los Angeles Times. Nearly 3 years ago, they gift-wrapped this investigation, David says, first for the city attorney and then for the federal regulators who piled on. Wells Fargo regional managers gave their branch offices daily quotas to cross-sell financial products to existing customers. If someone has a checking account, sign them up for a savings account, or a credit or debit card, or online banking services. Standard upsell/cross-sell scheme, right? Former CEO, what's his name? Dick Kovacevic, I'm going to guess at that pronunciation, actually invented a target for each customer called the GR8 initiative. GR8, E-I-G-H-T. Great. Because it's great. Haha. GR8. The GR8 initiative. 8 add-on products per household was the target. This is the equivalent of a used car salesman upselling the undercoating. Hilariously, Kovacevic is now on the board of another fraudulent company, Theranos. I don't know whether that's Theranos or Theranos or for that matter what they are, but it's all linked because David wants you to know everything you need to know about these guys. But you see what's going on here. So they want cross-selling and upselling going on. Their bank people, if you've got a checking account at Wells Fargo, they're going to pester you to open a savings account, or maybe buy some CDs, buy online banking, a credit or debit card, all of that kind of stuff. And that the target is sell them 8 more pieces of crap. If they've got one, sell them 8. Every household doing business with us should have 8 of our garbage items on their menu. Okay, employees who missed sales quotas, and I guess they had those too, would have to work weekends or stay late to catch up. They were also threatened with firing. To handle the pressure, some employees opened accounts or ordered credit cards without customer permission. Just to pause here again, because you might have been thinking, well, you know, there are sales quotas, and if you didn't make your sales quota, then yeah, you got to work late, work weekends, somehow catch up, etc. But again, we're still at bottom talking about if you can't sell garbage that people don't want to those people, you have to stay at your current salary. There's no overtime. You got to stay there until you sell this garbage, which, you know, again, even still, there may be some holdouts who say, well, look, you got hired for $50,000 in order to sell this many things. Finish the job, however long it takes you to get that $50,000. On the other hand, it's the galling kind of MBA-izing of everything. It's not something that you can really do. At the management level, where they're not actually busying themselves with the hard work of sales or the reality that nobody wants this stuff. Some people do, and they'll buy it, and others won't, and there's nothing you can do about it. But some executive says, I hereby declare that every household shall have 8 of our products, and workers will divide that up by how many workers we have, and if you don't sell your share, you're fired. I mean, that's pretty Glenn Ross of you, but 2, in the boardroom, that probably makes a certain amount of sense. You believe, for whatever reason, that every household that banks with us should have 8 of our products, and if these guys don't sell 8 of our products to them, then they're fired. And by the way, we keep their salary, and golly, what a great bonus that is for us, because that lowers our outlays. And hey, this is all starting to make a certain amount of sense. Even if I had some experience in sales and understand that you can't just dictate you will sell this, it starts to sound a lot better when I hear about the bonuses we're going to get. Plus, of course, bonuses for all the additional sales that are made because of our terrific motivational program. Of course, it also enters into this dangerous territory, which David mentioned right at the top, wage theft. You pay somebody $50,000. The idea usually is you'll do your best to sell things, and yeah, there might be sales quotas, etc., but at some point you get to go home and eat some dinner and go to sleep. But, if you're paying $50,000 for somebody to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, that's one thing. If you're paying somebody $50,000 to say you got to work 24/7 until you meet these ridiculous and impossible sales quotas, now you're entering into wage theft territory. Especially if that wasn't agreed upon at the time of hiring. But to hell with all of that. Anyway, so the goal of the enterprise, and this is the more important part. Oh, I don't want to skip over this, by the way. Employees, of course, who missed the sales quotas had to stay late to catch up. They were also threatened with firing. To handle the pressure, some of them, this is how this begins. They opened, I need to meet the sales quotas. How about this? And if I can't sell them, I'll fake it. You open accounts or order credit cards without customer permission. I can't get this guy to buy 8 products. I'll just tell the computer he bought 8 products, and that'll be that. Wells Fargo says 5,300 workers have been fired for such conduct over the past 5 years. By the way, this sets off no alarm bells until this story breaks in the boardroom. Like, at some point, do you say, well, today's business is we have to fire these 3 guys in our San Antonio branch, I don't know, whatever. They were caught creating fake accounts and credit cards without customer permission in order to meet their quotas under our GR8 initiative. And somebody said, well, good riddance to them. They're fraudsters, and we ought to get rid of them. And nobody at any point says, this is a little bit weird. I feel like at some point I have to mention this, but this is the 5,297th, 5,298th, and 5,299th employees that we've had to fire for this, and I feel like this is becoming some kind of a pattern. And apparently somebody else said, not just yet. Hold your horses, pal. Call me when it gets to 5,300. And then, okay. Nobody at any point notices we're firing an awful lot of people for fraud. I wonder if we need to do some retraining. If they had fired 5,300 people for sexual harassment, they probably would say, we need to call HR for a little meeting about this. But not with fraud. Why? Because they got a slice of it. That's why. The goal of the enterprise... Oh, Pepe the Frog just jumped down my throat here. The goal of the enterprise was not really to make money through fees on the add-on products. CFPB's complaint, and that's really surprising to me, CFPB's complaint states that only 85,000 of the 1.5 million fake accounts incurred fees. So, on the one hand, you say, wow, they charged 85,000 people fake fees. On the other hand, other hand, you say, well, only it's out of 1.5 million fake accounts. So, well, no harm, no foul. Over 1.4 million people didn't incur fees. Yeah, but that's 1.4 million fake accounts. Why then? So they incurred fees of about $2 million. Pocket change. And just 14,000 of the 500,000 unauthorized credit cards that people passed out in this scheme incurred fees of about $400,000. And $2.4 million doesn't move the needle at a bank with $5.6 billion in quarterly profits. Quarterly profits. $5.6 billion in quarterly profits. That's true. Consumers who have to deal with the aftermath, hits to their credit score, mandatory arbitration that they're locked into on accounts that they never asked for, a good point, suffered additional harm. But that was a byproduct of Wells's larger scheme. What was that larger scheme? The idea here was to show steady quarterly growth to investors. You got to make these sales quotas. Why? Because we want sales? Yes, but why do we want the sales? In order to show steady quarterly growth to investors so that they'll give us even more money than you're making on this stupid sales growth. There's always another game going on here. The daily sales quotas weren't plucked from the sky, but designed to maintain industry leadership in cross-selling. Wells constantly brags in its earnings statements about this. Cross-sell is the result of serving our customers well, understanding their financial needs and goals over their lifetimes, and ensuring that we innovate our products, services, and channels so that we earn more of their business and help them succeed financially, which is a great statement about what your company can do if it can do that. But if it can't do that, then what? We'll fake it. Basically, we're going to have quotas and force people to aggressively sell this stuff to show how much people naturally love it in the open marketplace. They don't. They're being pressured into it, and that's a different thing. Forget the fact that people are actually then just saying, I can't sell it, I'll just fake it, which is far worse, of course. Anyway, that's what they say about this program and the reason that they focus on cross-selling according to their 2015 annual report. Anyway, the bank tracks cross-selling metrics. The average Wells Fargo retail banking customer had 6.11 products at the end of 2015. So the GR8 thing is still a lofty goal. Despite all this crap, they can only get people to buy just over 6 products. Yeah, but it isn't called the GR6, so you're fired. Why is it 8? Because the name is GR8, and only 8 makes sense as a part of that. And so you need to sell 8, not 6. Although, I'm sure that the guy was, well, how many should we have? We should have 8. What are we going to call it? How about GR8? That's almost certainly how it came to it. But I don't even put it past these guys to say, well, we're going to call it the GR8 initiative because then they'll have to sell 8. And 8 is more than 6, so that's good. Multiple accounts signal to Wall Street that Wells maintains deep relationships with its customers, meaning that the bank will keep making money off of them. And that's good for getting people to buy your stock. And if you are on the board, that's the best possible outcome because then you can pay yourself a bonus because of it. If the stock price goes up, we win because we make ourselves win because we vote on what our salaries are. Growth in cross-selling plus growth in the customer base equals growth in earnings, investors assume. Wells Fargo stock doubled from 2011 to mid-August 2015, the period described in the fraud complaint. Mind you, once again, I just want to restate what's actually going on here is at Wells Fargo, they don't give a flying anything about are we doing a good job here? Are we selling more products to more people because our products are great and our customers are happy? Who cares? The point of being in business and the point of my having an MBA is I can justify voting myself more money if I have some kind of metric that proves that I'm worth that money. The metric will be, are we growing? And is our stock price going up? So we start from that standpoint. What do we need to do to make my stock price go up so that A, the stocks I own are worth more, and B, I can convince the board to give me more money because they make more money when their stock price goes up along with ours. And the focus is never, because everything's financialized, especially the financial industry, I guess. The focus is never, they don't teach in MBA. If you go to through an MBA program or to business school, when do I have the class about customer satisfaction and actually doing something good so that people opt to spend money with me? Oh, that class? Yeah, we canceled that class in 1965. This is a class about if you can't make people like your stuff, what metric can you use to get more money anyway? Oh, okay. Well, thanks very much. That's what I need to do. So that's what it comes down to. How do I double the stock price, whether people like what's happening or not? I don't give a crap if they're loyal customers. I need metrics that say they are, whether they are or they're not. So don't tell me about satisfying them or making them happy so that they stay loyal. Force them to be loyal. Find a damn way. Okay? Everybody has to have 8 things. It's great for all of us if they have 8 things. Okay? And that flies. That actually works in the boardroom. Do you think we should? Did we do any studies to find out whether people like any of these products? Okay, Grandpa. Geez, we'll find out later. Now, we'll continue with the article. Keep in mind that John Stumpf, the CEO of Wells, took $155 million in stock options between 2012 and 2015 when all this stock doubling went on, as the share price soared, in part based on the successful cross-selling strategy. And as Fortune reported yesterday, the executive of okay, so he had already seen that, I guess. As Fortune reported yesterday, does that mean the Fortune article that I put aside is actually older than I thought? Maybe I only saw it tweeted today. And so, it's dated September 12th. And David's piece is September 13th. So, okay. So I've got it. I had it in reverse order. David came second. Whoops. That's okay. I'll cover for it anyway because, I don't know. I like him. Is that good enough? I mean, that's crony capitalism. But that's okay, right? I didn't make any money. So I guess it's okay. It's crony something else because there's no capital involved. I can tell you that. Okay. Where were we with this? I scrolled up to look at the date. Now I got to find my place again. Right. So Stumpf, the CEO, takes $155 million in stock options during this explosive growth. And as Fortune reported yesterday, the executive who oversaw the banking unit the entire time those millions of fake accounts were opened is, quote, retiring with a $124.6 million golden parachute. So, the fake accounts goosed the stock price, directly benefiting executives. That's securities fraud. Wells Fargo knew that the cross-selling metrics, which it put in its annual reports, were bogus. It didn't fire all 5,300 employees last week, but over a 5-year period. Yet the bank continued to promote those numbers to investors without informing them of the fake account generation. You see now where that becomes an even broader securities fraud issue. The stock price kept going up because Wells Fargo kept saying in its annual reports, we have this fantastic cross-selling program and it's working like a charm. And look, our stock price is already going up. You want to be a part of this. You want to invest in Wells Fargo. You want to send us cash that we can use to pay ourselves bonuses because we're constantly growing. When in reality, they were constantly firing people for fraudulently opening fake accounts. But telling the public, look at our growth that they knew was fraudulent, they kept showing to people and collecting more and more money based on those sucker investors mistaking fraud for growth. That's not actually allowed. Now, there's a wage theft element to this as well. I think we mentioned and explained some of that earlier on. For some reason, news reports keep claiming that employees ginned up fake accounts to acquire bonuses. That's the usual MO. You would think that that was the usual MO. If these sales targets were mandatory, they weren't bonuses at all, but part of their salary. And the low-paid, non-union branch workers simply had to comply or lose their jobs. The sales pressure from management was unbearable, one former employee told CNN Money. Employees who missed targets would stay late, work weekends, take extra time to make it up. Workers were told to reach goals or else you're not going home. Or you're going home for good, I guess. Even regional managers would stay late to achieve the sales quotas. These efforts were all unpaid. In fact, there are several class action lawsuits on behalf of Wells Fargo workers alleging unpaid overtime, failure to provide meal or rest periods, wrongful termination, and emotional distress. One major case has been moved to state court in California and could go to trial next year. Unfortunately, those workers will not be helped by the federal government action. Wells Fargo did not have to admit wrongdoing, and parts of the settlement would be inadmissible in court. Moreover, the wrong agency handled this case. CFPB can only deal with consumer fraud. Where is the Securities and Exchange Commission? Or the Labor Department for the wage theft part? Or the Justice Department, which should be receiving a criminal referral in this case? This was a scheme to raise the stock price, just as surely as talking up garbage about your stock in online discussions or dog and pony shows or faking documents for due diligence in an acquisition, whatever. And it was also a scheme to profit off the unpaid and or at least uncompensated for all the time that was put into it labor of branch office workers. Those are federal crimes. But the scandal won't hurt the bank or its executives at all, according to financial analysts. The $185 million in fines Wells has to pay represents about 3 days of the bank's profit, and it doesn't come close to matching the cost of stock inflation and labor law violations. Why aren't the individuals who benefited from this scheme being brought to justice? It's quite clear that the corporate culture of high sales quotas drove workers to cheat. In fact, Regional managers encouraged it. Either executives knew exactly what they were doing, or they lost control of their subordinates, a violation of Sarbanes-Oxley certifications that chief executives make all the time under penalty of law that they have adequate operational control. Why do you get the big bucks? Because you've got adequate operational control. Oh, what if I don't have it? Can I still have the big bucks? Yes. In fact, have a bonus. Regardless, they are culpable in this case, and they profited handsomely through a bloated stock price. It's not nearly good enough to allow Wells Fargo to conduct a years-long securities fraud scheme and have all their high-level executives get away with it. The timidity and excuse-making, that such cases are simply too hard to make, underlines how modern law enforcement destroys accountability before even trying. Nothing can better explain the anger and frustration Americans feel about a rigged system. Get it? Now we're back to the politics of it. Very good. Very well done. Thank you, David. I'd be interested now. I guess we should take a peek over at the Fortune treatment of it, because now I'm curious. I almost feel like I shouldn't have started with David on this one, because I have a feeling that the Fortune piece doesn't get nearly as explicit about the fact that, hey, this isn't consumer fraud. Hey, this wasn't done to generate
Wells Fargo's
fees.
leader
Oh my
in the
goodness.
creation
It
of
certainly wasn't done to allow them to play auto-playing video on me. Thanks a lot, Fortune. Yeah, bums. Anyway, I bet they didn't. I wonder. I'm curious to see whether they got to that or not. Let's take a look. Wells Fargo executive who headed the phony accounts unit collected $125 million. That's probably more of a how-to manual for the Fortune crowd than a cautionary tale. Stephen Gandel has written this one. Let's see how he does with it. Wells Fargo and Company's sandbagger-in-chief is leaving the giant bank with an enormous payday, $124.6 million. In fact, despite beefed-up clawback provisions instituted by the bank shortly after the financial crisis, and the recent revelations of massive misconduct, it does not appear that Wells Fargo is requiring its former consumer banking chief, Carrie Tolstedt, to give back any of her 9-figure pay. Jeez, 9 figures. Unbelievable. However, it did go to a woman, so that's good. Had it gone to a man, it would have, I guess, been 25% higher. Until recently, Tolstedt was in charge of the unit where Wells Fargo employees opened more than 2 million largely unauthorized, that's a nice way of putting it, largely unauthorized, customer accounts, seemingly routine practice that would be that employees internally referred to as sandbagging. On Thursday, Wells Fargo, I remind you every time they say Wells Fargo, in Fortune it lists their stock exchange code and their latest information, down 1.57%. Talk about, yeah, where does this culture of short-term gains come from? Anyway, on Thursday, Wells Fargo agreed to pay $185 million, including the largest penalty ever imposed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, to settle claims that it defrauded its customers. On the other hand, it paid almost as much to the person who did it as a bonus. So who can tell how they feel about this? The bank's shareholders will ultimately have to swallow the cost of that settlement, but who cares? We already got what we needed out of them. The bank also said that it fired 5,300 employees over 5 years related to the bad behavior. And now the fact that they don't stop here, it's stated point blank, but unless the next paragraph is, by the way, I just said over 5 years. Again, that brings up the issue of why in the boardroom are they like, man, we keep having to do that. Maybe the firings never reached the level of the boardroom, surely, but then that just tells you about the operational control they didn't have. 5,300 people fired for fraud out of your branches? I didn't know. It kept happening like 2 or 3 at a time. So, why would that ever raise eyebrows? If you interrupted every board meeting to say you were firing 6 people, you'd never get anything done. That's probably the excuse. Tolstedt, however, is walking away from Wells Fargo with a very full bank account and praise. In the July announcement of her exit, which made no mention of the soon-to-be settled case, Wells Fargo's CEO, John Stumpf, said Tolstedt had been one of the bank's most important leaders and a standard bearer of our culture, a champion of our customers, no less. On Thursday, Richard Cordray, the head of the CFPB, had a different take. It's quite clear that the actions of Tolsted's unit are unfair and abusive practices under federal law, said Cordray. They are a violation of trust and an abuse of trust. But never mind. A spokesperson for Wells Fargo said that the timing of Tolsted's exit was the result of a personal decision to retire after 27 years with the bank. No crap, Sherlock, which doesn't make any alliterative sense anymore because of what I did for radio. That really? How does spokesperson for Wells Fargo do it? Pardon me, spokesperson, can I get a comment? The timing of Tolsted's exit is suspicious. The whole unit that she ran is now, it's been announced, being fined $185 million for an ongoing 5-year program rife with fraud. But she's leaving just as this is happening. Oh, and by the way, you're giving her $125 million on her way out the door. Can you tell me whether Tolsted's exit was the result of firing over this fraud being discovered, or what? No, actually, this is a personal decision to retire after 27 years. Yeah, I mean, well, aren't all, if you're retiring, aren't they all personal decisions to retire after some number of years? My question is, was she really actually found out and forced out, or is she just retiring? No, she's just retiring. Okay, well, I mean, that's it's an answer, but I guess I'm confused as to why you thought, the way of putting this, right? Why go there? Well, no, actually the timing is the result of a personal decision to retire. Yes, okay, so you're saying she decided to retire. Yes, but I'm saying it in a fancy way. I'm a spokesperson for Wells Fargo. Oh, well, very well done there. The spokesperson declined to comment on whether the bank was considering clawing back Tolsted's pay. In a statement following the settlement, Wells Fargo said, Wells Fargo reached these agreements consistent with our commitment to customers and in the interest of putting this matter behind us. Wells Fargo is committed to putting our customers' interest first 100% of the time, which we didn't do, but now, going forward, we will. And we regret and take responsibility for any instances where customers may have received a product that they did not request. Shortly after the financial crisis, big banks in the nations, including Wells Fargo, promised that their top bankers would not be able to keep large paydays if it was found that those rewards were gained through harmful conduct. Open and shut, right? It was supposed to be the stick to the carrot of Wall Street bonuses. But the latest example of fraud at Wells Fargo shows that the banks are unwilling to wield those sticks, especially when it comes to their top executives. So they get carrots and carrot sticks is what you get. The stick is actually crudité, and you enjoy a crispy, delicious treat to go along with your crispy, delicious treats. No different than usual. It is not clear how closely or at all Tolsted was responsible for or even aware of the widespread abusive tactics at the bank. Neither the CFPB nor the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office, which sued the bank, named Tolsted directly. Wells Fargo said the 5,300 firings happened over 5 years and included managers as well as employees. It's likely that Tolsted managed at least part of that purge. But in bringing the charges, an official from the CFPB said Wells Fargo was aware of the behavior for longer than it should have been, I guess, without putting a stop to it. So there you go. She made a personal decision to retire after 27 years. Okay, well, what about all this 5 years worth of firings? 1,000 employees plus per year for 5 years in a row for fraud. Yes, that's the 27 years we're talking about happened before these last 5. The timing was she's retiring after 27 years, but she's been with the bank for 32 years. She was just asleep for the last 5. It was a decision she made to retire after 27 years, and she wrote her resignation letter, but then she fell asleep for 5 years. And when she woke up, she said, "Oh my God, I forgot to retire. Here's my letter." And we were like, this letter is dated 5 years ago. I know. It's weird. Okay, well, for sleeping so quietly and being such a good person. Here's $125 million. I guess. No, that can't possibly be it, right? What's more, Tolstead ran the community banking division of the bank, which included its retail banking and credit card divisions during the entire period in which the customer abuse was alleged, which goes back to 2011. The CFPB said about 3/4 of the unauthorized accounts opened by employees of the Wells Fargo bank employees of Wells Fargo were bank deposit accounts. Another 565,000 were unauthorized credit card applications. Tolstead took over the division in 2008 after Wells Fargo merged with Wachovia during the financial crisis. Tolstead was, by the way, a regular on Fortune's Most Powerful Women list. She was replaced on this year's list by Mary Mack, who is taking over her job at the bank. And by the way, Miss Mary Mack does, in fact, dress in black. The silver buttons all down her back, still a matter of some speculation. That's great. So the Most Powerful Women list, it just goes to whoever occupies this spot. Whatever. So she used her power for good and not evil. Tolstead was regularly praised for her unit's ability to get customers to open numerous accounts. Because, whatever. For a number of years, Wells Fargo's proxy statement, which details executive pay, cited high cross-selling ratios as a reason that Tolstead had earned her roughly $9 million in annual pay. For instance, in Wells Fargo's 2015 proxy statement, the company said that its compensation committee had authorized Tolstead $7.3 million in stock and cash bonuses for that year because, quote, under her leadership, community banking achieved a number of strategic objectives, including continued strong cross-sell ratios, record deposit levels, and continued success of mobile banking initiatives. All based on crap, but we say she met them. So, imagine that for like the average employee, right? Well, you met your goals. We set out these goals. You met them. And in some cases, you even exceeded them. We were thinking about maybe $9 million for you this year. I mean, at best, well, we can scratch together $500 for you at Christmas. Thanks for sticking around. Way to go. Later that year, the LA City Attorney's Office sued the bank because of its sales tactics, saying that many of the abusive practices came from the intense pressure on Wells Fargo's employees to get customers to open up numerous accounts. A separate class action of former employees alleges they were fired for not meeting cross-selling goals or going along with the aggressive sales tactics. Earlier this year, when Wells Fargo released its annual proxy statement, it once again said that in order to justify her multi-million-dollar bonus, Tolstead's division had, quote, achieved a number of strategic objectives. I like that. That's a very Donald Trump quote. Why did you get this gigantic boost in pay? Well, we achieved a number of strategic objectives. What were those strategic objectives? That's all the time we have. We've got to leave it there. When Tolstead leaves Wells Fargo later this year, on top of the $1.7 million in salary she has received over the past few years, $1.7 million in salary? What? Okay, whatever. We were just being told that she got $9 million last year. I don't know whether that's a typo or what. Anyway, she will also be walking away with $124 million in stock options and restricted Wells Fargo shares. Some of this hasn't vested yet, but Tolstead gets to keep all of it because she's technically retired. Had she been fired, Tolstead would have had to forfeit at least $45 million of that exit payday and possibly more. Wells Fargo's proxy statement says that the bank has, quote, strong recoupment and clawback policies, and that the bank will revoke bonus pay if it's found that the conduct of an executive resulted in representational harm to the bank, or that the executive was not able to identify or manage risks in his or her division, but there's no sign that Wells Fargo is going to ask Tolstead to return even a sliver of her stock jackpot. This appears to be exactly the situation the clawback provisions were created for, says Dennis Kelleher, president of Better Markets, a group that lobbies for more regulation of the big banks. If they don't apply here, when will they apply? On Wall Street, the carrots are still widely handed out. The sticks, however, remain out of sight. So not a real generous read by Fortune magazine, but not nearly, I think, as insightful as David's. But of course, there will be, I'll go out on a limb and predict zero resonance among the general public or the industry, for sure, on the wage theft angle in all of this. And probably not even much attention to the fact that, yeah, this was treated as consumer fraud. And though there was consumer fraud involved, it would be a huge penalty if it was consumer fraud. They defrauded people out of about $2.5 million worth of unauthorized fees, and then had to pay a $185 million fine. That I'm cool with. You squeezed $2.5 million out. Well, we're going to fine you $185 million. That'll learn you. Except it didn't, because it should have been that should have been the consumer penalty, and the securities fraud should still be pending. So excellent point from David. All right. Let's see. What are we looking at here? I wanted to catch up and peek back at what David Farenthold is up to. And I think it might just be this is odd. I wouldn't expect. So 46 minutes ago, we got this little bit here, a numbered tweet storm from David Farenthold. One being, I just came across a little story about real Donald Trump, that is Donald Trump, about how he games the system on charity in 3 parts. But is this not his story? Let's see if this is something new. First, in 2014, Donald Trump gave 2 $25,000 gifts from Trump Foundation to Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, crediting pointing out that I guess the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is on Twitter. Okay. And then a screenshot of the line entry. Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. West Palm Beach, by the way, Florida. That's interesting. Okay, all right. You zoom in, you can see. Okay, so $50,000 total to them on that one. Then number 3 here. By then, of course, Donald Trump's foundation was all other people's money. Trump hadn't donated a dime in 5 years to the foundation. So money that went to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, $50,000, was really somebody else's money. That's one point. But nobody does that, it says. So nobody expects it. Money from a wealthy person's foundation is assumed to have come from the person, him or herself. I should say, money from a wealthy person's private or family foundation, like Donald Trump's, is expected to come from the person, him or herself. So when the Leukemia Society thanks its big donors, do they thank the Trump Foundation? Or maybe Vince McMahon, who gave most of the Trump Foundation's money? No, they thank Donald Trump and his wife, who hadn't given the Trump Foundation $1 in 5 years. And here the screenshot of, I guess, one of the, I don't know what the publication is, or piece of the website that thanks big donors to the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society. And there it is, Mr. and Mrs. Donald Trump get the credit for that one. Then the last part. In 2014, where does the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society pay to hold its annual Palm Beach Gala? Donald Trump's club, just like the Police Foundation, have their gala at Saturday, January 18th, 2014 at the Mar-a-Lago Club in Palm Beach. This setup allows Donald Trump to get credit and to get money from a huge, huge charity without apparently donating a single dollar of his own. Now, I'm interested in that, except that I guess shouldn't be surprised. David Farenthold, great reporter, and run of the mill when it comes to doing, I guess, self-promotion for his own work, which is an essential part of the business. Absolutely, no doubt about it. But this story is no different from any of the rest of them. This is the exact same story. In fact, even a little less interesting, although, and worth considerably less than the police the Palm Beach Police Foundation story. This is a $50,000 to leukemia and lymphoma, by the way, which I presumably has tremendous costs in their research angle, right? $50,000 for them, $150,000 for the police foundation, one local police department's benefits fund or scholarship fund. Got $150,000 on that, and a $250,000 fee generated for them to have their own charity galas at Mar-a-Lago, and they also continue to do it. I don't know. To me, that's the even bigger story. Why he has, I mean, this is more of the same. I'm not really sure why this got any particular focus, but okay. I guess every time Farenthold speaks, I guess I assume that something worse is coming, and this isn't worse. So there's my little review of that one. Okay, let's see. Other stories that I have collected to put aside. I mentioned yesterday. How about this one? This is again. I can only put take a sip out of the fire hose here. This from Charles Pierce at Esquire, which also almost always guarantees it being pretty good. Though I feel like I just got taken by Farenthold on that one. But I mentioned yesterday the Scott Walker story, and that I was waiting for more analysis from others who are closer to what's going on there or who had time to delve into it. Well, Charles Pierce did, and I'll take his take on it right here. Campaign money magically makes lead paint safe again. How? What are we talking about? Okay, Charles, tell me about it. If I recall, Charles begins, there was some confusion a couple of weeks back on the definition of pay to play. Remember, we were talking about that, in context of Donald Trump. For example, if someone contacts an aide to a prominent politician and asks for something and then doesn't get it, that's not pay to play. Hillary Clinton. No matter what the optics make it look like in the narrative. Of course, if, say, a state attorney general gets a campaign contribution and then calls off an investigation of a scam that the contributor may have been running, that's a little closer. And then there's this thing, which comes out of the evidence bomb that The Guardian dropped Wednesday on the head of Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, as reported by the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Ready? Citing leaked documents gathered during a now shuttered investigation into the governor's campaign, The Guardian US, an arm of the British newspaper, reported that Harold Simmons, owner of NL Industries, a producer of the lead formerly used in paint, made 3 donations totaling $750,000 to the Wisconsin Club for Growth between April 2011 and January 2012. Simmons's donations were made before and after Republicans approved 2 laws helpful to the industry, one in January 2011 and the other in June 2013. The 2013 measure was inserted in a budget bill in the middle of the night despite warnings about its constitutionality. The documents confirm earlier reports that Walker solicited millions of dollars for Wisconsin Club for Growth, a group then run by R.J. Johnson, one of his top campaign advisors. The Guardian story says Walker was even warned in an email about potential red flags with Simmons, who died in 2013, including a magazine story that described him as Dallas's most evil genius. Now, Charles Pierce. Lead paint? Jesus, we can all agree that lead paint is a bad thing, right? I mean, this is where we are. And by the way, he has some luxuries that we don't. Julius effing Caesar knew lead paint was a bad thing, but he didn't know why. You take money from people who make lead paint, and then you use it, by the way, to make it easier for them to duck responsibility for the poisoning of your state. Well, apparently not. For instance, we're going back to the quoting here, I guess from The Guardian. In an overnight meeting on June 2013, Republicans on the legislature's Joint Finance Committee inserted a provision into the budget long sought by the lead paint industry. Who even knew that was still an industry? That was meant to block lawsuits pending against them by 171 children sickened by lead paint. Don't allow them to sue. Petty, it's frivolous lawsuits. Oh, boy. In July 2014, though, a federal appeals court ruled that the lawsuit by one of those children could continue despite the 2013 state law. The boy who suffered lead poisoning, still in this day and age, can sue a half dozen major manufacturers of paint used on the Milwaukee house where he lived, based on a theory approved in a controversial 2005 Wisconsin Supreme Court decision. And this is complicated, and it's worth discussing one of these days. Maybe not this day. The seventh, where I left off in this sentence, I'm going to have to start over again. But you'll see again why the complexity is so interesting. The boy who suffered lead poisoning can sue a half dozen major manufacturers of paint used in the Milwaukee house where he lived, based on a theory approved in a controversial 2005 Wisconsin Supreme Court decision. The Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, the federal court in Chicago, ruled. You can see what the complication is. Why is he suing a half dozen manufacturers of paint used in his house? There weren't a half dozen different major brands of paint used in his house, probably. They don't know what brand of paint was used in the house. But you do know that there were only a half a dozen companies that produced lead paint of the kind used there in quantities sufficient for there to be a statistically significant chance that one of their paints was in fact the one in there. But that is a controversial thing. I mean, the basic assumption is if you are going to sue us for giving you lead poisoning, you're going to have to be able to establish as fact that it was our paint that was in there. If DuPont makes lead paint, but Sherwin-Williams also makes lead. I don't know whether either of those people make lead paint. They probably never. I don't know. I'm not saying that they did. I'm just using them as an example, right? So let's say Sherwin-Williams made the paint that was actually in your house, and you sue DuPont. And they're like, well, you're going to have to prove that it was our paint that did this to you, right? What's controversial is you say, well, no, I mean, scientifically we know lead paint is bad for people, period. You made lead paint. That's a bad thing. Statistically, there's a pretty good chance that it might have been your paint, but we can't prove that it was yours, and we can't prove that. I mean, let's say we imagine we are omnipotent and we figure out that it's Sherwin-Williams paint, then fine, we sue them. But since we can't tell and no one knows, but we know who's responsible for putting this paint on the market, we sue everybody. That way we're going to get the responsible party. And also, by the way, it was wrong of you to be selling lead paint. You should be liable for this thing. And whatever the judgment essentially is going to be against lead paint manufacturers, you pay 1/6, you pay 1/6, you pay 1/6, all the way down the line. Somebody did this and is fairly stuck for the money, but they get away with only paying 1/6 of it. The rest of the 5/6 of it falls on the rest of you, but only because you were doing something that should be producing liability anyway. And the fact of the matter is, elsewhere there are other people who are sick who will also sue, and it'll fall to the benefit of somebody else who will pay only 1/6 of what they should next time. But eventually it all works out, right? Statistically, it should come out in the wash if enough people actually find their way into court and sue. That's the theory. Is it controversial? You bet. But the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals said, yeah, you can go ahead. And no, you can't just preclude suits by whim like this. You made lead paint? Oh, I didn't know it was dangerous. Well, you know what? It was. So, what are you going to do about it? Part of the cost of doing business, I guess, is you find out that I've been selling poison for 100 years. Okay, that's going to cost me some money. In an interview Wednesday, back to the quote from The Guardian in Pierce's piece, in an interview Wednesday, the boy's attorney, Peter Earle, said he was trembling with rage at the news of the contributions by the industry, saying that they were meant to block claims by the most vulnerable among us. He said that Republican leaders in Wisconsin had benefited from industry money and then acted to try to retroactively block lawsuits by children harmed by lead paint. Jesus, these people. And that's the only conclusion that's really necessary from Charles. I'll have to agree with it. Although, gee whiz, you could have added a little bit more for whatever your salary probably is. Ha ha ha. Okay, I'll let you off the hook on that one, Charles. Send me a check or something like that. So I just wanted to give you that as a sampling for what is the sort of things, what kind of things are falling out of this Wisconsin bit after all. So in case you thought it was, a waste of time chasing down Scott Walker on these things. Probably never a waste of time to chase down Scott Walker. Better still, I want to try and find some more reporting on this stuff. The real story is yet to come, I think, on all this. The background of the story being that this was all documentation that was produced in a broad probe of Scott Walker's activities, which if I read this correctly and recall it correctly, the state Supreme Court stepped in at some point and said, yeah, no more of this investigation stuff. And apparently they tried to seal the records and all this, and the information that the Guardian got a hold of was leaked to them. So this was all information about the manipulations that Scott Walker conducted of things of this nature and others of a similar nature that were found out, documented, and they just decided, yeah, let's not tell anybody about these things and try to seal them. Wow. That's a major violation of the public trust all by itself. Let alone, it doesn't even matter in that sense what's actually in the documents. But once we find out what's in those documents, it's that much worse. Okay. Another update, you know what, we'll save this one for tomorrow. I've already given Farenthold some time on this today, but we'll tease this one for tomorrow. Maybe they'll have more information about it. They may have found the 6-foot-tall portrait of Donald Trump that he bought with charity money, and they haven't got a picture of it yet to share for publication, I guess, but they think they've tracked it down to one of the golf clubs, and they got a pretty credible story about how it got there, so congratulations on that one. I guess Stewie Rara doesn't have it. I guess another thing we'll save for tomorrow, more on the morons who make up this. I got a story to weave together tomorrow, I guess. I'm getting more and more information from different places. I almost wish I was writing at this point, but it's so much easier to talk this stuff through. The Trump Tower turns out to be, I'm going to just tease it this way, it looks to be operating as a billionaire's frat house, essentially. There's, where we read the other day that Stewie Rara, right? He rents multiple different Trump properties, and we read that he lives either directly above or directly below Trump's personal apartments in the Trump Tower. I would have thought he'd be in the penthouse, so maybe he's directly below. But I don't know. Anyway, I just also found the story in Mother Jones yesterday of yet another Russian mob-tied figure who also lives in Trump Tower. And the things these guys are up to inside Trump Tower, it's really amazing. It's this crazed, possibly drug-fueled, insane bunch of wackos that, all of them, by the way, just marrying models decades younger than they are, like they trade or something. Everybody go out and get a model. And poker games and illegal gambling, and it's like you wonder whether there's drunken billionaires, roaming the hallways screaming about who knows what, being the number one king of all fun, etc. Well, it would be an amazing thing if that was all going on behind the staid exterior of the Trump Towers. But apparently there's plenty of evidence that is actually what's part of what's going on. Okay. Plenty more that we can get to. We still haven't gotten to the Pepe meme stuff, but I don't know. At least I put it out there for you to read. I guess we'll close out with this one. This is on another serious note. Brad Miller, former Congressman Brad Miller, actually sent me this one. Self-promotion, I guess, in a way. And it's his own piece in The Hill. But this was a big story yesterday, and I think, if I recall correctly from the summary that Justice sent, they may have touched on this as a topic on the after show. If they didn't, they probably will today. But this time, maybe we'll give them some lead-in interest on this one. But just as I read the story to Joan yesterday about the Senate acting aggressively to vindicate its subpoena power, we also have a story about that other part of Congress, the House of Representatives, using its subpoena power in ways for which we might say it was never designed. And Brad Miller exposes this piece here, and under the title, Congress Goes to Work for Exxon, which, depending on how cynical you are, you may or may not have ever expected to be the case. This is published in The Hill, which does occasionally publish things worthwhile. The House Science Committee, on which Congressman Miller used to serve, he used to head up its Oversight and Investigations Subcommittee, so this is something he's very closely familiar with. And I got to know Brad Miller fairly well in discussing his interest in, because I also had an interest in it at the time, that particular, very weird, I guess, genre of congressional rules watching, enforcement mechanisms for subpoenas and for oversight authority in the Congress. He, as chair of the Investigations and Oversights Subcommittee, kept running into difficulty getting the Bush administration to comply with his own investigations and subpoenas, and so he ran into these problems a lot. The House Science Committee is sticking its nose where it doesn't belong and conducting an investigation and hearing far beyond its constitutional power. He was a little bit of a stickler for the rules on these things. For years, at the behest of the oil and gas industry, the committee has held hearing after hearing, challenging the overwhelming scientific consensus that fossil fuel emissions cause global warming. In this radio listening audience, we know about that, and we know that it does, and we know that Republicans are crusading to prove that it doesn't, or that it's all a hoax. But let's get into the specifics of the way they're abusing their authority, because Miller makes it easy. The committee has the authority to conduct such hearings, and there is no requirement that the committee members consider the evidence with an open mind or be less fawning of industry witnesses. You just have to accept that they're going to be that way and document the reasons for it so you can convince other people to take their conclusions with a grain of salt. I'm adding that commentary. He says the committee has the authority to do this, and they don't have any actual requirement, legal requirement, to be open-minded or less fawning of the industry, right? In their own statements, many members shamelessly repeat talking points provided by industry lobbyists. To date, it's been distasteful but perfectly legal. But now, the committee's obeisance to the industry has crossed the line. Are we ready? Has crossed the line. It really has, and I better get to it. In July, the committee issued subpoenas to the Attorney General of New York and Massachusetts. Okay, you know who the Attorney General of New York is, and maybe the Attorney General of Massachusetts even. You'd think this committee issued subpoenas to them about these investigations. Why would they want to hear from them? They'll only come in here and say, yeah, it causes global warming, and yeah, there's been a massive conspiracy at fossil fuel producing industry headquarters to obfuscate that and to try and deny it. So why are they subpoenaing them? They issued subpoenas to the Attorneys General of New York and Massachusetts concerning state investigations under state law in state court, this becomes important, to a private law firm that has represented state and local governments and private parties in environmental litigation, and to several environmental organizations. The state investigations and investigations by potential private litigants are of allegations that ExxonMobil fraudulently represented to investors and customers, like Wells Fargo did, that scientific research on the environmental effect of fossil fuel emissions is flimsy and inconclusive, when they knew from their own in-house research decades ago, we all know that now, that global warming is real, potentially catastrophic, and largely caused by fossil fuel emissions. The committee's investigation and the state government and private investigations are not concurrent investigations of the same questions. The committee is investigating the investigations. The initial stated purpose for the committee's subpoenas was to determine if the state proceedings unconstitutionally, I should put that in quotes for him, abridged ExxonMobil's freedom of speech to deny climate change and to protect ExxonMobil's rights in the proceedings. The committee subpoenaed communications between the attorneys general, their environmental organizations, and the private law firm relating to the investigation, subpoenas for documents or potential prosecutions of companies related to the issue of climate change. The documents demanded by the committee would include legal strategy, possible witnesses, and discussions between lawyers and prospective clients, all information protected from disclosure by court rules. The documents would be of obvious benefit to ExxonMobil. What sports team would not want to have the other team's playbook? A committee will hold a hearing on Wednesday morning to consider its constitutional authority to subpoena those documents. The committee should have done some legal research before it issued the subpoenas. And if you go way, way back, you'll find out the fantastic history that Brad provides for us. In the late 19th century, the House issued a subpoena without a hint of legislative purpose to determine whether a bankruptcy trustee had favored some creditors over others. The Supreme Court held that the bankruptcy court could protect the creditors and the debtors' rights, and the matter was none of Congress's business. The matter was still pending in a court, the Supreme Court said, and what right had the Congress of the United States to interfere with the suit pending in a court of competent jurisdiction, like, say, a state court that has nothing to do with federal courts or federal jurisdiction? In other words, there's long-standing practice that, yes, there are, in fact, reasonable and strict limits to what Congress can subpoena. They can't simply say, well, we subpoena and we're Congress and we're important people, and so therefore you must comply, and if you don't, God only knows what they'll do. Anyway, I just thought that was really an interesting thing. You should take a look at the rest of Brad Miller's arguments here, but the essential elements are out there. The Congress is investigating people who are investigating why ExxonMobil and others ignored their own in-house science about global warming and climate change, and the Congress wants to try to put a stop to it. Very much like they were doing in Wisconsin. How interesting is that? And very much like, of course, they were doing they're after things very much like what they were doing in Wells Fargo. I guess it's all of a piece. Boy, oh boy, what a system we have here. And you'll hear more about it, no doubt, as we hand the microphones over to the guys on the after show. That's Wink and Justice, and it's Thursday, so it means we get to say, thank God it's Joe Vidi. What can we squeeze in here before this all comes to an end? A member of the infamous Davao Death Squad, oh my goodness, testified that Philippine President Duarte ordered a mosque bombing and extrajudicial killings as mayor of Davao.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Speaking of mosques, the construction of a Covington, Georgia mosque is halted after city officials are threatened by the armed Georgia militia, and a Florida man with a history of anti-Islamic online posts on pro-Trump chat rooms is arrested for the burning of a Fort Pierce, Florida mosque. All that plus much, much more on the After Show with Wink and Justice. Stay tuned.